Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm out on a solo hot tent overnighter and it's got me thinking about a few things. Is hot tenting really worth it? So let's talk about this in great detail. Okay guys, so with hot tenting growing more and more popular as the days go by, it seems, there are a lot of dynamics about hot tenting that a lot of people do not think about. So right now, I look pretty cozy in my tent, and the truth is I am. I'm very, very cozy. I've got all of my firewood cut and split. I've got some coffee, I've got a kettle here. I've already had my supper. I've cooked inside of the tent. It is raining outside. If I could tuck in, I'm nice and dry. I've got a beautiful view of the forest. My sleeping area is all set up. I've got an inner bug net. If there were bugs out, I'd be totally fine. But right now with wintertime, there's not really many bugs. But I do have a nice bedding system inside, so I'm going to be very, very warm. So this is kind of the classical YouTube or Instagram look of hot tenting is right here. This image. What you see after all of the work is done. So this is what I want to talk about. Instagram and YouTube, we all see it. I'm on Instagram and YouTube. We'll go through all the different kind of photos and videos and everything looks perfect. It looks beautiful, awesome. And that's the way it is after the work is done. So you got to remember all those photos are just a glimpse into that adventure and just a sliver of how much work is put into it. So first thing, firewood, okay? So right here you can notice that I've got a ton of firewood cut inside of here. Now it is wintertime, it is raining. Firewood takes time to find and cut and split. Now if the firewood is wet, you need to dry it out. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I've got a load of beautiful hardwood and it is drying out, so I'll have tons of wood for tonight and in the morning for coffee on this bad boy. So that is kind of the first chore is firewood before you even get inside of the tent. The second thing to think about is the tent itself. So when you're out hiking in the wintertime, generally you get on the trail about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. Some are really early, some are a little bit later. When you get on the trail and you're hiking, in the wintertime it gets dark at about 4 p.m., 5 p.m. So ideally you'd really want to stop at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it's not really fun setting up a hot tent from start to finish in the dark, especially when you got a stove, a pipe, a tent, everything to get set up. And then me personally, I like to cook and I like to have everything done in the daylight so I can visually see where everything is. I'm not going to lose anything. I can make sure there's no embers, my pipe's not touching the sidewall, everything's good and safe. So ideally, like I said, let's say we hit the trail at 7 o'clock, we hike till 11 o'clock, take a break, have lunch. By 1 o'clock, you really want to have the area that you want to sleep in already picked out. So, and then it's time to set up the tent. Well, right now I'm in an area that doesn't have a lot of snow because we're actually coming into spring. So this tent has a diameter of 10 foot, making it quite a large area to find a flat spot to camp. So if I were in deep snow, I could A, either float the shelter on the snow, or B, dig down to the ground, which can be a lot of work. So I'm lucky today, I'm actually in an area where I've camped before, so I knew that the tent would fit here, so that's a huge time saver. But you really got to put a lot of thought into what shelter are you using, and where can it fit, and how long is it going to take to set up. Alright, so once you get your location picked out and you've got your tent all set up, which can take anywhere from 20 minutes to about an hour and a half realistically, depending on what kind of ground surface you're working with, how large your tent is, all those factors. So once you get your tent set up and you're finally squared away, firewood, 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 firewood. You've got to get firewood. So you've got to scan the area, find the trees that are going to be dead and hopefully dry. Get all that wood cut, slogging through whatever snow you have. Some snow might be knee deep, some snow might be just like this, might not be anything. But you got to find the wood and you've got to get it processed. So over here I have a little area that I've been processing wood. Got this big log here, I've been cutting that up. and then batoning it down, splitting it. You can do that with a knife or a hatchet or an axe, whatever you want to bring. But you've got to get the firewood processed. Now that could be a lot of work, especially right now where it's raining off and on. I'm going to be soaked just as I am now from cutting and splitting wood all day and then getting it inside of the tent. So that's a lot of work. You got to find the area, get the tent set, get all the firewood done, all hopefully before nightfall, because doing it in the dark is a lot more difficult than it will be during the daytime. Okay, so once you've got all of that figured out, you've got your location, you've got your shelter set up, you've got your firewood sourced, cut, split, everything's done, then you need to turn your attention to what are you going to do for the stove. Are you going to light it now, or are you going to wait till later on and light it? Because as soon as you throw a match inside of that stove, you are now a slave to that stove. You need to be there to feed it and keep it going. So right now, I've got my stove damped way down. So it is burning coals. It is very, very hot, but you'll notice there are no flames. So I damped it down quite a bit so I don't have to keep feeding wood going through my supply. Now, talking about my supply, I have a bunch of dry firewood off to the side right here. This is going to be my morning supply for firewood. So I'm not going to touch that at all tonight. Over here I have morning kindling. So this is kind of recovery wood. It's basically thumb size in diameter, very, very dry softwood. And I keep double stacks. So half of that is recovery wood, and that is if the fire does snuff out and I need something really small, I could dip into that pile, grab one of these pieces, toss it in, and that usually gets the fire going very quickly. And then you can go back into throwing your larger pieces in. But like I said, half of that is morning kindling. And I also have tinder, and I know where my matches or fire steel are at all times. So it's very important to stay organized. That's the biggest thing with hot tenting. Stay organized, because everything takes time. So another thing that you might want to consider when thinking, is hot tenting really worth it, or is it even right for you, is the cost. The cost of hot tenting is very expensive. However, it's very comparable with any other form of hiking, backpacking, camping, because you can go ultralight hiking and get the best quality down sleeping bag, the best quality tent, the best quality sleeping pad, and you're going to be spending a huge chunk of money just like you would if you had that. So there are options for different tents, different manufacturers, different brands. There are options for different stoves, titanium being the premium stove to go for. It's lightweight, packable. However, if you can't afford a titanium stove, you can still get some pretty decent steel version stoves on the market. So budget is going to be a huge factor in kind of determining what kind of gear you can get to be happy with carrying. Because like I said, you can get lightweight gear, you can get heavyweight gear. If you're going to be pulling in a sled or driving in a truck, it won't matter. So that experience might be really, really worth it for you. If you're going to be hiking in and you have a big steel stove with you or a gigantic heavy tent, you might not get the enjoyment factor out of it as you would with a lightweight setup. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what do you want to accomplish and what's your budget, because it's very, very important to think about. So keep in mind, every photo that you see on Instagram and every video you see on YouTube is only a glimpse into that adventure, okay? Every time the camera gets shut off, every time there's a pause in between taking photographs and capturing video, there is a ton of work going on. It is impossible to document the whole trip because the work never stops, all right? So even right now, I'm talking to the camera, I'm still doing things off camera. I'm still fiddling with the stove. I'm still moving pieces of wood. I'm still cleaning out dishes and whatnot. There's always something to be done while hot tenting. The only time you really do get to sit back and relax is in the night. So when you come in here at nighttime, zip the door shut. Perfect, absolute heaven. You get the glow from the stove. It's super nice and warm. You get all your clothing dried out. You can put a pot or kettle on top of the stove, get coffee, hot chocolate, whatever you need to do. Perfect, but that is only after all of the work is completed. So, is it really worth it? Me personally, I can go camping with just a sleeping pad and just a sleeping bag as long as it's not raining or snowing, and I could be just as warm inside of those two pieces of sleep kit as I can inside of here. But I'm not going to be able to cook inside of my sleeping bag. I'm not going to be able to dry clothing out. I'm not going to be able to have a living space where I could do more inside of a shelter. It's just crawl in and go to sleep. With this system, even though it is a small one-person teepee, I could still do a lot of stuff in here. I could prep wood in here if I need to. I can read. I can watch movies. I could dry my boots out, which is a huge thing for me because my boots get wet. And if it is -10, -15, getting out of your sleeping bag and putting on frozen boots is never fun. So right here tonight, I'm going to put my boots, even though it's not freezing today, they are wet from the rain. So I'm going to set them right next to that wood stove, and they're going to dry out nicely. And then tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm going to be able to put my feet inside of some nice, dry, fresh, warm boots. So, is it really worth it? It is. It is absolutely worth it, but there is a ton of work that needs to go into doing it, and it is a massive learning curve. You'll see a lot of these lightweight tents in a lot of forums on Facebook and a lot of places on Instagram and whatnot, people talking about burning holes in them. It is just a tent fabric. Yes, they do melt, they do burn. That is probably because the person burning in it either A, made a mistake, stuff happens, tents get burned all the time, or B, just bad stove etiquette. So you want to be careful of what you're putting in your stove and how you're operating it. You don't want to be jamming in a whole bunch of softwood and it crackling and spitting sparks all up and out the chimney. Even if you do have a really fine mesh of a spark arrestor, if you go loading that stuff in there, the spark arrestor is going to clog up very quickly and it's going to start backdrafting smoke inside of your tent, which is a huge no-no. Very, very dangerous. Now today, where it's not terribly cold, I do have the bottom of my tent actually pitched up off of the ground. The other thing people will talk about is condensation, so that's why I gone ahead and done that today with the rain, and it's not very cold. I pitched it up off the ground. It'll allow a lot of fresh air to go inside, cut down on the condensation. That way I don't have to burn the stove so fiercely hot to burn off the moisture. I can just have the best of both worlds by leaving the door open, pitching the tent a little high, and kind of having a nice living space in there, because these tents do get extremely hot, even with a tiny wood stove. If you have not gone hot tenting, you have no idea. When you get inside of one of these tents, even with a tiny little ammo box stove, they get crazy hot. Crazy hot. And it'll be -15 outside, and you'll be stripped down your boxers and a t-shirt inside of a tent like this with a wood stove going. Guaranteed. So it can be worth it. It can definitely be a burden as well, because there is a ton of work. Like I said, I can go out in a hammock setup and have everything set up within 5-10 minutes. This, I can't even get the tent set up in 10 minutes. It takes a lot more time. But like I said, I could do more in a hot tent than I can in a cold hammock or a cold tarp or a cold tent or even just a sleeping bag. So you really got to think about, what are you trying to accomplish on that adventure? Do you have the time to set it up? Are you going to be able to find an area that allows it to be set up? Are you going to be able to source good firewood to even make it worth your while? And then, are you going to burn it all night? Because if you're going to burn it all night, you're going to need to triple your wood supply. I don't have a whole lot of firewood because I'm not going to be burning it all night. I'm going to burn it probably till midnight, load it up with wood, shut the door, and let it burn out. And then in the morning, I'll relight it. So that's my take on it. That's my personal opinion. Just pay attention to what you see on Instagram, because even my photos are just a glimpse, just a split second of what is happening. And then it's work, 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 work. So it is definitely worth it, only if you have that work drive in you. And then you get to relax. You get to sit back and relax. So yes, me personally, I do say it is worth it, but not all the time. It depends on the situation, the temperature, what you want to accomplish on that trip, how much gear you can carry, how much weight you can handle, and many, many more things to worry about. So I hope that helps everybody out with a little bit, just a little bit of hot tenting behind the scenes. It is a ton of work. That's all I can say. It's not as glamorous as it looks during the daytime. In the evening, it's that picturesque, nice glow. You're nice and warm and snuggled up inside the tent. That is always the benefit, especially when it's raining. You get the rain tapping on the outside of the tent. You get some hot chocolate cooking inside. Absolutely, but only after the work. So I hope that helps you guys. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.